The red dust of Mars swirled against the viewport as Alan Wright stared out at the barren landscape. 50 years had passed since the war, yet the nightmares still came every night. He rubbed his temples where the neural implant ports remained, cold metal against his weathered skin. Another day in paradise, he muttered to himself, his voice rough from disuse. At 62, Alan's body remained surprisingly strong, preserved by military-grade augmentations and the higher gravity training. Room he still used daily, habit not purpose. His small outpost on Olympus Mons was meant for a research team of 10, but he had lived here alone for 15 years. The communication terminal beeped. Alan frowned. Only 3 people had this channel, and none ever used it except for the mandatory check-in every 6 months. He pressed the receiver. Wright. Commander Wright. This is Lieutenant Samantha Davis, Earth Defense Force, Deep Space Communications Division. Alan didn't recognize the voice. You have the wrong channel, Lieutenant. No, sir. Admiral Daniels provided your contact. This is unofficial. Alan's eyes narrowed. Greg wouldn't give his private channel to some lieutenant without good reason. You have 3 minutes before I disconnect. He heard the young woman take a deep breath. Sir, I've detected an SOS signal from Epsilon Eridani, the colony that was destroyed in the war. Alan felt something cold slide down his spine. That colony fell 48 years ago. I know, I was there. The signal contains genetic verification codes, sir. They match the colonists reported dead. Command thinks it's an echo or a trap, but I've analyzed the signal patterns. This is recent. Someone is alive out there. Alan closed his eyes. He saw flashes of fire, heard the screams as the Krivax ships bombarded the settlement. He remembered giving the order to retreat, to save as many as possible while he held off the enemy fleet. Send me the data, he said. Already done, sir. Alan walked to his command terminal, checked the incoming file. The data scrolled across his screen, signal analysis, verification protocols, transmission patterns. But what caught his eye was a sequence buried in the noise, a specific pattern he recognized instantly. Who else has seen this? He asked. I brought it to Admiral Daniels and the Defense Council. They decided not to investigate. Smart move, Alan said. Following that signal would violate the peace treaty, could restart the war. But sir, if there are survivors, then they've survived 48 years. They can wait until diplomatic channels clear the way. That could take months. And the signal's already fading. They might not have months. Alan examined the pattern. Again. It was there, unmistakable. A personal encryption protocol he had developed during the war, taught only to his most trusted officers. Someone was using it deliberately, knowing it would be recognized by very few people. Why come to me, Lieutenant? I'm retired. The woman hesitated. Because you're the harbinger, sir. You're the only one who ever faced the Krivax and won. Alan grimaced at the old title. The harbinger, the war god. Names whispered by frightened soldiers and civilians alike. Names for the monster he had become to save humanity. That man doesn't exist anymore. Sir, with respect, Earth needs him again. Alan terminated the call. He sat in silence for long minutes, staring at the data. Then he accessed his private server and pulled up the classified files on Epsilon Eridani. Population, 4,732. Evacuation. Ships launched, 3. Estimated survivors, 1,247. Bodies recovered, 0. The official record stated that the remaining colonists died in the attack. But there had never been confirmation. The Krivax had driven human forces from the system before a proper search could be conducted. Alan pulled up another file, this one his personal mission log. He read his own words from decades ago. Final, evacuation ships away. Engaging Krivax fleet to cover retreat. If anyone remains on the surface, God help them. We cannot reach them. His hand moved unconsciously to the neural ports at his temples. The experimental system had allowed him to interface directly with his ship, to become one with its weapons and defenses. It had made him faster, deadlier than any normal pilot could be. It had made him the weapon humanity needed. It had also nearly destroyed his mind. The communication terminal beeped again. This time it was a familiar voice. "She came to you, didn't she?" Admiral Greg Daniels asked without preamble. "Your lieutenant has a problem with authority," Alan replied. "Sam's a good officer. Too good to ignore something like this." "You should have shut it down, Greg." "I did. Officially." There was a pause. "Unofficially, I thought you should know." Alan said nothing. "Look, I remember what happened at Epsilon. We both lost people there. If there's even a chance—" "It's been 48 years, Alan said. "And what if it were you? Trapped on a hostile world for half a century, finally getting a signal out, only to be abandoned again." The words hit Alan harder than he expected. He had been alone on Mars by choice. Those colonists, if they existed, had no choice at all. "What do you want from me, Greg?" "Nothing official. Nothing on record. But if someone were to investigate, privately," Alan understood. Plausible deniability. If he went and found nothing, no harm done. If he found survivors or evidence of Krivak's treaty violations, Earth would have the proof it needed. "I'll need access to my ship. The Nemesis was decommissioned years ago." "No," Alan said. "It wasn't." A long silence followed. Then Greg sighed. "I'll send the authorization codes. But Alan, be careful. The implants, I know the risks." After ending the call, Alan stood and walked to a sealed door at the back of his living quarters. He pressed his palm against the scanner, then leaned forward for a retinal scan. The door slid open with a hiss. Inside was a small room containing a single chair surrounded by interface cables. He hadn't used the neural link in 15 years. Doctors had warned that each use caused cumulative damage to his nervous system. Eventually, it would kill him. But if there were survivors on Epsilon Eridani, people abandoned for nearly 5 decades. Alan sat in the chair and reached for the main cable. His fingers trembled slightly as he connected it to the port at his temple. Information flooded his mind: ship status, orbital position, star charts, weapon systems. The Nemesis, hidden in orbit around Phobos, powered up remotely at his command. Lieutenant Davis was taking a huge risk contacting him. Likely risking her career, possibly facing charges. She must truly believe the signal was genuine. As the neural link stabilized, Alan made his decision. He would go to Epsilon Eridani. Not as the legendary Harbinger, not as humanity's war god, but as the man who had once abandoned people who might still be alive. He owed them that much. The Nemesis would be ready to launch in 6 hours. After that, a 2-week journey to Epsilon. Alan began to prepare, uncertain whether he was about to save lives or start another war. Lieutenant Samantha Davis paced nervously in her small apartment. Her datapad showed the automated alert. Unauthorized access to classified files, Epsilon Eridani. They knew what she had done. Her career was likely over, but that wasn't what worried her most. Her screen blinked with an incoming message. No identification code. She accepted it with trembling fingers. Doc 17, 1 hour. Come alone. Tell no one. The message vanished immediately after she read it. Samantha grabbed her uniform jacket and headed for the door. Someone had noticed her investigation, and she suspected it was Commander Wright. At the dock, security was mysteriously absent. She found her way to Bay 17, which according to the registry was empty for maintenance. Instead, she found a sleek, matte black ship unlike any current military vessel. Its hull bore no markings, its lines predating modern design by decades. "The Nemesis," said a gruff voice behind her. "One of a kind." Samantha turned to face Commander Alan Wright in person. He was taller than she expected. His silver hair cropped short, his posture military straight despite his age. The neural implant ports at his temples gleamed dully under the dock lights. "I didn't think you'd come," she said. "Neither did I." Alan walked past her toward the ship. "You brought the full signal data?" Samantha nodded, following him up the ramp. "Everything I could download before they locked me out of the system." Inside, the Nemesis was equally unusual. The bridge contained only a single command chair surrounded by interface cables. No crew stations, no separate navigation or weapons consoles. It was designed for me, Alan explained, noticing her confusion. Or I was designed for it. Hard to say which came first. He took a small device from her hand and inserted it into a console. The data from Epsilon Eridani appeared on the main screen. There, Alan pointed to a sequence buried in the transmission. That's a personal code I created during the war. Taught it to only 5 people. 4 died during the evacuation of Epsilon. And the 5th? Dr. Maya Ellis. Alan's expression darkened. Xenobiologist, specialist in Kryvax behavior. She stayed behind to complete data collection. I ordered her to evacuate. She refused. You think she's alive? After all this time? Alan studied the signal again. The code is hers. The question is whether she sent it or someone found her notes. A new voice spoke from the doorway. Either way, we need to find out. Admiral Greg Daniels entered the bridge, followed by a woman, in her mid-40s with short black hair, and the insignia of Earth Science Division. Dr. Olivia Chen, Daniels introduced her. AI specialist. She'll help upgrade the Nemesis's systems. I don't need help, Alan said coldly. Your ship's AI is 40 years out of date, Dr. Chen replied, unintimidated. Unless you want the Kryvax to detect you before you even reach the system. Alan frowned but didn't argue further. What's your stake in this, Greg? Officially, you denied the signal exists. Officially, I'm still denying it. The Admiral lowered his voice. But the Kryvax have been too quiet lately. Intelligence suggests they're rebuilding their fleet beyond treaty limits. If they've been holding human prisoners all this time, it would violate every clause of the peace agreement, Samantha finished. Precisely. But we need proof before we can take action. The Admiral turned to Alan. You'll investigate quietly. If you find survivors, extract them. If you find evidence of Kryvax violations, document it. But do not engage unless absolutely necessary. Alan nodded. I work alone. Not this time. Admiral Daniels gestured to Samantha. Lieutenant Davis goes. With you? Absolutely not, Alan and Samantha said simultaneously, though for different reasons. She's not trained for combat, Alan argued. With respect, sir, Samantha countered. I'm not getting on a ship controlled by neural implants that might fry your brain mid-flight. Dr. Chen looked up from the console she was examining. That's exactly why you're going, Lieutenant. Commander, Wright needs someone to monitor his neural readings and disconnect him if necessary. Alan looked like he wanted to object further, but Admiral Daniels raised a hand to stop him. This isn't negotiable. You need backup, and Lieutenant Davis is already compromised by helping you. This gives her a chance to make her actions worthwhile. 2 hours later, the Nemesis silently departed Earth orbit. No launch authorization, no traffic control clearance. The ship simply vanished from all tracking systems as its advanced stealth systems engaged. In the command center, Alan sat wired into the neural interface while Samantha monitored his vital signs from a small station. Dr. Chen had hastily installed. Neural sync at 85%, Samantha reported. Blood pressure elevated but within safe parameters. Alan didn't respond verbally. His eyes were closed, his consciousness partly merged with the ship's systems. He could feel the engines, the hull sensors, the weapon systems, all extensions of his own body. Setting course for Epsilon Eridani, he finally said, his voice distant. Estimated travel time, 12 days at maximum stealth velocity. Samantha watched him with concern. The files say you can push faster than that. The files also say it. Could kill me, Alan replied. We'll stick to safer speeds for now. As they accelerated away from Earth, Samantha studied the mission briefing Admiral Daniels had provided. Epsilon Eridani, a yellow star similar to Sol, with 7 planets. The human colony had been on the 2nd planet, a terrestrial world with breathable atmosphere and Earth-like gravity. What was it like? She asked. The colony, before the attack. Alan was silent so long she thought he might not answer. When he did, his voice was softer than before. Beautiful. Green valleys, purple mountain ranges. The settlers had just established self-sufficiency when the Kryvax arrived. Why did they attack? The official reason was territorial encroachment. The real reason? They were afraid of us. Alan opened his eyes briefly. Human expansion was happening faster than they predicted. They wanted to send a message. And you sent one back, Samantha said quietly. Alan's expression hardened. 3 Kryvax dreadnoughts destroyed, 7,000 enemy combatants killed. And for what? A treaty they've been violating from day one. A warning light flashed on Samantha's console. Your neural stress levels are spiking. Try to stay calm. With visible effort, Alan steadied his breathing. You should get some rest, Lieutenant. We have a long journey ahead. What about you? I'll sleep when we reach Epsilon. He closed his eyes again, fully reconnecting with the ship. Samantha headed toward the crew quarters but paused at the doorway. Commander? What will we do if we find survivors? We bring them home, Alan said simply. And if we find Kryvax? Alan didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice had changed, becoming colder and more mechanical as the neural interface deepened. Pray that we don't, he said, for their sake. As Samantha left the bridge, she couldn't help but wonder if she had just witnessed the first glimpse of the legendary harbinger emerging from retirement, the war god that even the Kryvax had learned to fear. The Nemesis dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Epsilon Eridani system. Alan felt the ship like it was his own body, sensors extending outward like extra senses. His mind processed the data faster than any normal human could, scanning for signs of Kryvax presence. System appears clear, he announced, his voice strained from 12 days of neural connection. Running passive scans only. Samantha looked up from her monitoring station. The journey had been mostly silent, with Alan rarely disconnecting from the interface. She had watched his vital signs gradually decline as the neural link took its toll. Commander, you need to disconnect and rest, she said. Your brain activity shows dangerous stress patterns. Not until we reach the colony. Alan's eyes remained closed, his face gaunt. Keep monitoring the long-range scanners. If any Kryvax ships appear, we need immediate warning. Samantha frowned but returned to her work. The second planet grew larger on the view screen as they approached. Once a vibrant world of forests and oceans, now large sections appeared barren and gray. Atmospheric damage, Alan noted. Consistent with orbital bombardment, but some recovery is evident in the southern hemisphere. The ship entered orbit silently, its stealth systems making it invisible to any conventional detection methods. Alan guided the Nemesis to the location where the colony had stood. The ruins were visible from orbit, broken structures and the faint outline of streets forming a ghostly imprint on the landscape. I'm detecting power signatures, Samantha said suddenly. Faint, but definitely artificial. Underground, Alan's expression tightened. Survivors or Kryvax? Unknown. The signal is too weak to determine. Alan finally disconnected from the neural interface, the cables retracting from his temples with a soft hiss. He stood unsteadily, accepting the water Samantha offered. We need to land, he said. Find the source of that SOS. Your condition is irrelevant. Alan moved to a storage compartment and removed 2 sleek black combat suits. He tossed one to Samantha. Put this on. It has basic armor, environmental controls, and stealth capabilities. The Nemesis descended through the atmosphere, landing in a secluded valley 3 miles from the colony ruins. Alan advised caution as they prepared to exit. We stay hidden, we observe. We find the signal source. No engagement unless absolutely necessary. Samantha nodded, checking the small sidearm he had given her. What should I expect on the surface? Gravity slightly higher than Earth. Air is breathable but may have contaminants from the bombardment. The days are shorter here, about 19 Earth hours. They emerged onto the alien soil under a purple-tinged sky. The landscape around them was recovering from devastation. Young trees growing amid charred stumps, patches of blue-green, vegetation reclaiming barren ground. In the distance, the ruins of the colony stood like broken teeth against the horizon. Alan checked his scanner. The power signature is coming from beneath the main colony center. There's an entrance to the emergency bunkers 2 kilometers east. They move silently through the alien forest, Alan leading with the practiced stealth of a veteran soldier. Samantha followed closely, impressed by his physical condition despite his age and the strain of the neural interface. "You've been here before," she observed. "Not just during the attack." Alan nodded without looking back. "I helped establish the colony's defense systems, trained their security teams." His voice lowered. "For all the good it did them." They reached the edge of the ruins. What had once been buildings were now just concrete foundations and twisted metal. Nature had begun to reclaim the site, with vines crawling up the remaining structures. Alan stopped. Suddenly, raising his hand in warning, he pointed to a patch of disturbed earth near what had been the colony's main square. "Fresh footprints," he whispered. "Humanoid, but not human. Kryvax." Samantha felt her heart rate increase. "They're still here? After 48 years?" "Looks that way." Alan adjusted his scanner. The bunker entrance should be beneath that collapsed building. They approached cautiously, weapons ready. The entrance was hidden beneath rubble, but someone had cleared a narrow path down. Alan checked for traps or sensors before leading the way into the darkness. The tunnel descended steeply, opening into a large underground facility. Emergency lights still functioned, casting an eerie blue glow over abandoned equipment and supplies. The colony was designed with these bunkers as a last resort, Alan explained quietly. Enough supplies and power for the entire population to survive for years if necessary. Could people really have survived down here all this time? Before? Alan could answer. A sound echoed from deeper in the facility. A metallic scraping followed by voices. Not human voices, but the harsh, clicking speech of the Kryvax. Alan pulled Samantha behind a large storage container. Moments later, 2 Kryvax soldiers appeared. They were tall, reptilian creatures with 4 arms and leathery gray skin. They wore minimal armor, suggesting they felt secure in this environment. Between them, they dragged a human woman. She was older, perhaps in her 60s, her gray hair matted with blood, her clothes ragged. Despite her obvious pain, her expression showed defiance rather than fear. "Dr. Ellis," Alan breathed, his body tensing. Samantha grabbed his arm. "We're outnumbered. We need a plan." The Kryvax dragged Dr. Ellis through a doorway at the far end of the room. Alan waited until they were gone before moving forward. "There are more survivors," he said. The SOS was genuine. They followed cautiously, discovering that the bunker extended far deeper than the original plans had shown. The colonists had expanded it over decades, creating a hidden underground city. In a large chamber converted into a prison, they found 23 humans of various ages. Some were original colonists, now elderly. Others had been born in captivity, knowing nothing but this underground existence. "We need to free them and find Dr. Ellis," Alan said. "They'll be heavily guarded," Samantha warned. "Not for long." Alan returned to the entrance and reconnected to the Nemesis remotely. Samantha watched as his expression changed, becoming the cold mask that had earned him his fearsome reputation. "Nemesis will create a diversion at the far side of the ruins," he explained. "When the Kryvax respond, we free the prisoners." The plan worked initially. An explosion rocked the surface and most of the Kryvax guards rushed to investigate. Alan and Samantha quickly freed the prisoners, who looked at their rescuers with a mixture of hope and disbelief. "You came," an elderly man said, his voice breaking. "After all these years, someone finally came. We need to find Dr. Ellis," Alan told him urgently. "Lab 3, the man replied. "But be careful. Commander Vrax is with her." Alan's expression darkened. "Vrax? He should be dead." "You know him? He led the attack on the colony." Alan checked his weapon. "Samantha, get these people to the surface. The Nemesis will guide you. I'll find Maya." "That wasn't the plan," Samantha protested. "Plans change." Alan's voice had the finality of command. "Get them out. That's an order. As Samantha reluctantly led the survivors toward the exit, Alan moved deeper into the facility toward Lab 3 and a confrontation 50 years in the making. Alan moved silently through the dim corridors of the underground facility, following the signs to Lab 3. His combat training from decades ago returned naturally, muscle memory guiding him as he avoided Krivak's patrols. The sound of his diversion still echoed in the distance, buying him precious time. The door to Lab 3 was heavily secured, but Alan had expected this. He placed a small device against the control panel, and the lock disengaged with a soft click. The door slid open just enough for him to slip through. Inside, the laboratory was filled with advanced equipment, much of it a disturbing blend of human and Krivak's technology. In the center stood Dr. Maya Ellis, strapped to an examination table. Despite her age and obvious mistreatment, her eyes remained sharp and alert. Standing over her was Commander Vrax, his large reptilian form instantly recognizable despite the passing decades. "The neural interface is the key," Vrax was saying, his voice a harsh series of clicks translated by a device at his throat. "Tell us how it works." "I've told you for 48 years," Dr. Ellis replied tiredly. "I don't know, I wasn't part of that project." "You lie." Vrax raised one of his forearms to strike her. Alan stepped fully into the room, weapon raised. "She's telling the truth, Vrax. She wasn't on the neural interface team." The Krivak's commander spun around, his yellow eyes widening in shock. "Impossible, you are dead." Disappointed? Alan kept his weapon trained on Vrax, moving slowly to the side so he could see Dr. Ellis more clearly. "Step away from her. Now." Dr. Ellis stared at Alan in disbelief. "Alan, you came back?" "I got your message." He gave her a brief nod. "Just took me a while." Vrax backed away from the table, all four hands raised. The Harbinger, the human war god. There was fear in his voice, but also a strange reverence. "We thought you died in the final battle." That was the idea. Alan approached the table and released Dr. Ellis's restraints with one hand, never lowering his weapon. "What have you been doing here all these years, Vrax?" "The war ended decades ago. Research." The Krivaks gestured around the lab. "Your neural interface technology was far beyond our understanding. We needed to study it." "By experimenting on survivors?" Alan helped Dr. Ellis sit up. She was weak but otherwise appeared unharmed. "They volunteered," Vrax insisted. Dr. Ellis made a sound of disgust. "Volunteered under threat of death." Alan checked the corridor. It was still clear. "We don't have much time. Can you walk?" "I've been walking for 48 years, Dr. Ellis replied with surprising strength. "I'm not stopping now." A sudden alarm blared throughout the facility. Vrax smiled, revealing rows of sharp teeth. "Too late. My soldiers are returning. You cannot escape." Alan kept his weapon steady. "Who said anything about escaping?" "Maya, can you get to the entrance on your own? Lieutenant Davis is evacuating the other survivors." Dr. Ellis nodded. "What about you?" "I need to see what they've been doing here." He handed her a small communicator. "Get to the Nemesis. Tell Lieutenant Davis to prepare for immediate departure." "Alan, go." His tone left no room for argument. After Dr. Ellis left, Alan turned his full attention to Vrax. "Show me everything. All your research? Or what? You'll kill me?" The Krivak's commander seemed to regain some confidence. "You humans claim to value life so much." "I'm not going to kill you," Alan said calmly. "I'm going to expose you." He backed Vrax against a computer terminal. "Access the research files, now." Outside in the corridor, Samantha led the survivors toward the exit. Most were elderly, the original colonists who had survived the initial attack. Others were younger, born in captivity, never having seen the surface of their own planet. They moved slowly, helping each other along the way. A young man named Ben helped an elderly colonist. "Is it true?" he asked Samantha. "The war's been over for decades?" "Yes," she replied, checking around a corner before waving them forward. Earth thought everyone here died in the attack. Then why did the Kryvax stay? That's what Commander Wright is trying to find out. They reached the surface without incident. The Nemesis waited in the clearing, its ramp extended. As they approached, Dr. Ellis emerged from the ruins, moving with determination despite her ordeal. Where's the commander? Samantha asked, still below. He ordered me to tell you to prepare for departure. Samantha hesitated. I can't leave him. He's confronting Vrax, Dr. Ellis explained, getting evidence of what they've been doing here. In the lab, Alan downloaded the research files as Vrax watched silently. The data confirmed his worst fears. The Kryvax had been using the human survivors to study the neural interface technology, attempting to replicate it for their own soldiers. Dozens had died in the experiments. This violates every clause of the peace treaty, Alan said coldly. The High Command deemed it necessary, Vrax replied. Your technology gave one human the power to destroy 3 dreadnoughts. Imagine what an army of Kryvax with such abilities could accomplish. I don't need to imagine, I've lived with it. Alan touched the ports at his temples. This technology nearly destroyed me. It was never meant to be weaponized further. The door to the lab suddenly slid open, and 6 Kryvax soldiers rushed in, weapons raised. Alan dropped to the floor as they fired, rolling behind a console for cover. Take him alive, Vrax ordered. We need his neural interface intact. Alan returned fire, disabling 2 soldiers with precise shots to their limbs. He activated his communicator. Lieutenant, launch immediately, that's an order. Not without you, sir, came Samantha's reply. I have what we came for. I'll find another way out. The firefight intensified. Alan knew he was outnumbered, but escape had never been his primary objective. He needed to ensure the data reached Earth, proof of the Kryvax violations that would justify a full military response. A shot grazed his arm, the pain momentarily breaking his concentration. The Kryvax were closing in. Alan prepared for what might be his final stand when the ceiling suddenly collapsed, showering the room with debris. Through the dust and confusion, descended the Nemesis, hovering directly above the broken lab. Its lower hatch opened, revealing Samantha in the doorway. Need a ride, Commander? She called out. Alan sprinted for the ship, dodging energy blasts as he ran. He leaped for the hatch, Samantha's hand grasping his and pulling him aboard just as the Nemesis began to rise. I ordered you to leave, he said between heavy breaths. I decided it was a bad order, she replied with a slight smile. Dr. Ellis agreed. In the ship's medical bay, the doctor herself was examining the rescued colonists. She looked up as Alan entered. Did you get what we needed? He held up a data crystal. Everything. 48 years of illegal research, approved at the highest levels of Kryvax government. The Nemesis broke atmosphere, accelerating away from the planet. Alan returned to the command chair, connecting to the neural interface despite Samantha's protests about his condition. Detecting multiple ships entering the system, he announced, his consciousness expanding through the ship's sensors. Kryvax warships. They must have been monitoring the planet. Can we outrun them? Samantha asked. No. Alan's expression hardened as he fully merged with the ship. But I can fight them. That's exactly what they want, Dr. Ellis protested. They want to capture you and your neural technology. Then they'll be disappointed. Alan's voice had taken on the mechanical quality that signaled deep neural connection. Because I'm not planning to be captured. The Nemesis banked sharply as the first enemy shots passed nearby. The pursuing Kryvax vessels were larger but slower. Alan used the ship's superior maneuverability to evade their fire, transmitting distress signal on all Earth Defense Force frequencies, Samantha reported, including the evidence we collected. Good. Alan guided the ship through a series of impossible maneuvers. Even if we don't make it back, the truth will. But as 3 more Kryvax warships appeared ahead, blocking their escape route, Alan realized that reaching Earth might be impossible. The Harbinger, humanity's last war god, prepared for what might be his final battle. The Nemesis flew straight toward the Kryvax flagship, dodging laser fire with impossible precision. Alan, fully connected to his ship through the neural interface, had become one with the machine. His human limitations fell away as his consciousness expanded through the ship's systems. "Target their weapons first," Dr. Ellis advised from the secondary station. Her face showed concern as she watched Alan's vital signs flashing red on the monitor. "Alan, your neural activity is approaching critical levels." He gave no sign that he heard her. The Nemesis rolled and twisted between enemy ships, firing precisely at weapons arrays and engine cores. 5 Krivax vessels already drifted powerless in space. The flagship, nearly 20 times the size of the Nemesis, loomed ahead. On the bridge of the Krivax flagship, High Commander Jurak watched with growing rage. His large reptilian eyes narrowed as the human ship evaded yet another volley of fire. "How is one ship doing this?" he demanded of his weapons officer. "It's him," the officer replied, fear evident in his voice. "The Harbinger, the human war god." Jurak had heard the stories but never believed them. One human causing such destruction seemed impossible. Yet here was the evidence before him. "All ships, concentrate fire on the human vessel," he ordered. Back. On the Nemesis, Samantha watched anxiously as Alan pushed himself and the ship beyond safe limits. The rescued colonists huddled in the cargo bay, feeling every maneuver as the ship danced through the battlefield. "Earth Defense Fleet has entered the system," Samantha reported, checking the long-range scanners. "Admiral Daniels is leading them." Alan acknowledged this with a slight nod, the only indication he was still aware of his surroundings. His face had gone pale, and blood trickled from his nose, signs of neural system overload. The Nemesis suddenly shot forward, accelerating directly toward the Krivax flagship's hangar bay. The massive doors were closing, but not quickly enough. The small human ship slipped through the narrowing gap and skidded to a halt inside the enemy vessel. "What are you doing?" Dr. Ellis gasped. "Ending this," Alan said, his voice barely recognizable. He disconnected from the neural interface, the cables retracting from his temples. He stood unsteadily. "I'm going to speak with Jurak, face to face." "That's suicide," Samantha protested. "I'm not going to kill him," Alan replied, checking his weapon. "I'm going to show him something." Dr. Ellis seemed to understand. "The data. You want to show him what his people have been doing here?" Alan nodded. "Lock down the ship. No one leaves until I return." Before they could argue further, he exited through the airlock. The hangar bay was in chaos, with Krivax soldiers rushing to defend against the intruder. Alan moved with purpose, his combat suit deflecting small arms fire as he headed for the main elevator shaft. On the bridge, Jurak received reports of the humans' progress with disbelief. "One human cannot fight through an entire ship," he roared. "He's not fighting," an officer reported, confusion evident. "He's disabling our soldiers but not killing them, and he's broadcasting something on all internal channels." "What is he broadcasting?" "Data files, research logs, from Epsilon Colony." Understanding dawned on Jurak's face, followed by anger. "Shut down the transmission." "We can't. It's overriding our systems." Throughout the flagship, Krivax soldiers and officers were seeing the truth. Decades of illegal human experimentation, the hidden colony, the treaty violations authorized by their own leadership. The research logs showed that High Command had known and approved everything. When Alan finally reached the bridge, he found the door already open. Inside, Krivax officers stood frozen at their stations, weapons lowered, watching the screens as their government's lies unfolded before them. Jurak stood alone in the center of the bridge, his proud posture now defeated. "You could have killed us all," the Krivax commander said. "Why didn't you?" "Because this war ends today," Alan replied, his voice steady despite the blood now flowing freely from his nose and ears. "Not with more death, with truth." He activated his communicator. "Admiral Daniels, this is Commander Wright. The Krivax flagship is secure. I've transmitted all evidence of treaty violations to your ships and to the Galactic Council observers." "Received." "Commander," came the Admiral's voice. "Council representatives confirm receipt. They're demanding explanations from the Krivax government." Jurak looked at the human standing before him. this legendary warrior who had become more machine than man during their last conflict. Our people will not accept this humiliation. They already are, Alan said, gesturing to the bridge crew who had made no move to attack him. Your soldiers know they've been used. The truth is spreading through your fleet right now. Outside, the battle had paused. On screen, they could see Krivak ships standing down, no longer firing on Earth vessels. You won, Jirak admitted. No, one wins in war, Alan replied. But sometimes someone stops it. He swayed suddenly, his system finally giving out after the extreme neural strain. As he collapsed, the last thing he saw was Samantha and a medical team rushing onto the bridge, ignoring his orders to stay on the Nemesis. 3 weeks later, Alan woke in a hospital bed on Earth. His head was wrapped in bandages, the neural ports removed surgically. Beside him sat Samantha and Dr. Ellis. Welcome back, Samantha said with a smile. You've been out for a while. Alan tried to speak but found his voice weak. The colonists? All safely home, Dr. Ellis replied. The first, humans to return from Epsilon in 48 years. They're being treated like heroes. And the Krivaks? Their government has fallen, Samantha explained. Moderates have taken control, those who always opposed the war. They're negotiating new treaties with Earth and the Galactic Council. Alan closed his eyes. The neural interface? There was a pause before Dr. Ellis answered. Removed. It was killing you, Alan. The doctors say you wouldn't have survived another connection. He nodded slowly, feeling strangely peaceful. For 50 years he had carried the burden of being humanity's weapon, its last war god. Now that burden was physically gone. What happens now? He asked. That depends on you, said Admiral Daniels from the doorway. He entered the room, looking older but relieved. Earth Defense Force has officially reinstated you if you want it, or you can retire for real this time. Alan thought of Mars, of his lonely outpost. Then he looked at the people around him. Samantha, who had risked everything to find the truth. Maya Ellis, who had survived decades of captivity without losing hope. The colonists who had endured against impossible odds. I think, he said slowly, I'd like to teach. Teach? Samantha asked. The next generation of defenders. Alan managed a small smile. Not how to be weapons, but how to protect without becoming what they fight against. Outside the hospital window, the sun was rising over Earth. In orbit, ships from a dozen species had gathered for the peace conferences. Among them were Krivaks, vessels no longer enemies but not yet friends. The legend of the harbinger of humanity's last war god would fade into history. But perhaps something better would take its place. The story of how peace finally came to two species who had only known how to fight each other. Alan Wright looked out at the new day, and for the first time in 50 years, felt hope for the future.